It is all well and good to philosophize about certain things, but I don't think it is particularly useful to do so if you forget that whatever you reason out needs to have some basis in reality. And the fact of the matter is that reality simply is not dichotomous. Reality isn't either one thing or the exact opposite. Reality simply is whatever it is. And it doesn't care one iota about the fact that we do not understand it fully. It continues to be just what it is. What is this about? Let me explain. There are some people who have spent their whole lives arguing about whether morality is objective or subjective. And of course, both sides have great arguments as to why it should be one thing or the other. Objective morality is usually espoused by people like theists who think that it is something absolute that is handed down by a never-changing God, or even by people like Ayn Randists who think that they can establish a objective morality based on first principles. And then there, of course, there are the subjective moralities, moralists, whatever you want to call them, who think that morality is a purely personal thing that everybody has to decide for themselves. Well, reality simply isn't like that, is it? Because in reality, people have a moral sense, and there's an awful lot of agreement between people about what is or isn't moral. Now, what is happening there? Because on the other hand, people do, of course, vehemently disagree about morality as well. You see, morality is basically an emotional thing. It is something that we arrive at because of our emotional reactions to what other people think about us, when we find out what they think about us, what other people's intentions are towards us, and how other people behave towards us. All those things have formed our morality. Now, of course, everybody has very personal experiences, but on the other hand, we are all human beings, and we have all led perfectly, fairly ordinary human lives within human civilizations, and whether we want to pretend this isn't so or not, human beings will always be human beings. Or, to put this rather less absolutists, human beings are generally pretty much the same all over the world. Sorry, racists, that's the way it is. So, human experience is also rather common. There isn't an experience in the world really that 1 billion people haven't always also had. It's not just you who has undergone certain experiences. So we tend to have an awful lot more in common than there are differences between us. And that is why morality, something like morality, seems to be so absolute in one sense, that so many people at a gut level can agree on what is or isn't immoral. That leads me then to try and establish whether there is, for want of a better word, a way that is almost objective, insofar as something can be that is based on emotion, of establishing what is moral and what is immoral. And yes, there is. Of course there is. If you look at what a person thinks, what a person's intentions are, and what a person's behavior are, then we can decide whether those things are moral or immoral based on a number of criteria. Let's first of all see on how such information makes you feel, because that is the ultimate yardstick here. That is what establishes morality. Our emotions, how things make you feel. Now this, I'm not going to beat around the bush, this is the result of a video that was posted by Premed2 recently, and in which we've had quite a frank discussion. So this is about Jack, right? And his idea that it would be right and just, and this is something that Jack has confirmed with me, by the way. This is not something that I am pulling out of my backside. That Jack thinks it's right and just that people, certain people, should suffer eternally after they die. Now I consider that sort of an attitude towards other people deeply offensive and immoral. Premed, too, thinks he can argue the toss here. But sorry, if I find out that somebody thinks it should be right and just that I should suffer forever after I die, regardless of the fact that this is some sick little fantasy that's playing out in his head, that is something that I do not like one little bit. It makes me sick to my stomach to feel, to know that somebody feels that way about me. And that is why I judge that to be wrong in the first place. But let me just expand that a little bit and see how it would make me feel if he said such things, if he felt such things about people that are close to me, my family members, my friends, even you, Premed2. It would still make me feel terribly disgusted, and I would feel revulsion when I hear somebody say something like that. How does it make me feel if he says something like that about strangers? It still makes me feel sick to my stomach. So this is something that goes rather deep. But let me just expand this a little bit further again. You see, I am not emotionally unhealthy. This has been confirmed to me by professionals in psychiatry, right? So I can reasonably assume that my emotional response to something is not completely out of the ordinary. And now is where there is a rational basis for what I'm saying. Because if I feel sick to the stomach about the fact that somebody feels it would be right for me to be tortured, for example, then I can reasonably assume that most other people on this planet would equally feel revolted by the fact that somebody would wish harm to come to them. And that is what makes it justifiable from my perspective to state in an almost objective sense that such a thought pattern is in itself immoral, is by its whole nature immoral and revolting and disgusting and despicable. So this is not just something that I'm pulling out of my backside because I feel butthurt over the fact that Jack wants to see me harmed. This is an extrapolation about his attitudes not only toward me, but toward the large majority of humanity, and how he feels about most people in the world. And from that perspective, I think it's perfectly justified to call Jack immoral or even evil. There is no such thing as absolute morality. Evil is a made-up human term, but it still means something to us. It still means something to us to say that somebody is evil or to say that somebody is immoral. It has a resonance with almost every human being on this planet. And it is that resonance that I'm talking about. It is that resonance that makes a statement like this meaningful, and is that resonance that I use as a justification for calling somebody like Jack immoral.